Amazing millionaire CEO discovered a little girl abandoned by her drunk dad. His incredible res. Jack Thompson, the self-made millionaire CEO of a booming tech company in downtown Chicago, was on his way to taking a much-needed break. The endless meetings, contracts, and numbers had begun to blur together. Escaping the steel and glass confines of his office, he sought solace in the vibrant expanse of the nearby park. Yet, the moment he stepped onto the pebbled pathways, his thoughts turned chaotic, like the whir of a machine malfunctioning. He had built an empire, yet was it truly worth sacrificing his sanity for? As he wandered idly, trying to shake off the weight on his shoulders, he saw her, a little girl in a tattered dress, sitting alone on a swing. Her tear-streaked cheeks drew Jack like a moth to a flame, igniting echoes of his own tumultuous childhood. Memories flashed before him, days of barely making ends meet and nights spent longing for a father figure who never arrived. "What are you doing here alone?" he asked cautiously, but the question settled over him like a shroud of fear as the girl wiped her tears and managed a whisper. "My dad, he's not coming back." Jack's heart sank. He was no stranger to abandonment. His mother had fought tirelessly to raise him alone, instilling values like resilience and compassion. But now, standing in front of Lily, he felt a pang of hesitation. Could he step into her life without tearing apart the carefully curated world he had built? Could he risk everything just to save a child? Weeks passed in a blur, as Jack trudged through the labyrinth of bureaucracy that defined the foster care system. Each encounter felt like a new layer of conflict, gnawing at his conscience. His corporate teammates were bemused, questioning his involvement in what they deemed a moral quagmire. "You're a CEO, Jack. Focus on what matters." But what mattered? His instincts screamed for him to step forward, to confront Lily's father, yet the fear of it all threatened to paralyze him. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sitting in his sleek office, surrounded by the trappings of success, Jack found himself grappling with spiraling thoughts. What sacrifices would he have to make to advocate for Lily? How far could he go before it jeopardized his thriving business? The looming question was unbearable, making even the simplest decisions feel monumental. He had always been assertive, a force to be reckoned with in the boardroom, but here, with Lily's future hanging in the balance, he felt like a feeble shadow of himself. A confrontation with Lily's father was inevitable, but as Jack stared at the door before him, sweat beading at his brow, he felt himself wavering. Every heartbeat echoed the significance of his next move. How could he navigate this dark, twisted road of neglect and pain without losing himself, his company, his life as he knew it? The stakes soared with every second. Was he about to step into a fight that could consume him entirely, or was it time to start questioning everything he believed about success? With uncertainty clawing at his insides, he knew this battle was just the beginning and the worst was yet to come. Jack's heart raced as he finally mustered the courage to push open the door to the dingy bar where Lily's father, Hank, was rumored to spend his evenings. The clamorous chatter and the smell of stale beer assaulted him as he stepped inside. The vibrant lights and raucous laughter contrasted sharply with the darkness clouding his thoughts. This was the unpolished world he had worked hard to escape, yet here he was, drawn back into it. As he scanned the room, Jack wrestled with self-doubt. What business did he have confronting someone like Hank? Was he really prepared to face the skeletons lurking in the shadows of his own past? He cursed himself for not bringing anyone along, for not seeking advice. It was foolish to go into the lion's den alone. But he didn't have the luxury of time. Lily needed him now. At the far end, nestled in a corner, Jack spotted Hank. The man leaned heavily on the wooden table, a half-empty glass in hand, his eyes glazed. It was a familiar sight, one that Jack had seen too many times in his youth, a parent lost to addiction, carelessly tossing away their responsibilities. The thought of Lily growing up in that environment ignited a fury within him. This wasn't just about confronting Hank, it was about claiming a brighter future for a child who had already endured too much. With each step toward Hank, Jack wrestled with the tightening knots in his gut. He could feel their eyes on him, a well-dressed outsider intruding on the life choices and mistakes of another. Did he have the right to judge? As he reached the table, Hank looked up, and something flickered in his bleary gaze, a hint of recognition, perhaps shame. "Who the hell are you?" Hank slurred, attempting to rise from his seat, but wobbling and falling back down. "I'm Jack Thompson," he said, keeping his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm here for Lily." Something shifted in Hank's face, a fleeting complexity of anger, astonishment, and insecurity. "What do you care about her? You just some high-end mighty businessman trying to save faces." "No," Jack said, frustration spilling into his tone. "I care because she's just a kid. She deserves better than this," he motioned around at the bar, "and better than you can offer her." Hank's expression darkened, and Jack felt the palpable tension rise. This was more than an encounter, it was a reckoning. Would Hank lash out, both verbally and physically? Would he reject Jack, forcing him to abandon his mission? "Stay out of my business, man," Hank croaked, trying to regain a semblance of authority. "You don't know a damn thing about me or what I can give my daughter." "It doesn't matter what you think you can give her," Jack replied, feeling a flicker of resolve. "What matters is what she needs. She's alone, scared, and you're wasting her life." Jack was aware of the spotlight now veering toward him, the other patrons holding their breaths, drawn into the conflict. Perhaps this was part of his evolution, shedding the corporate skin he had cloaked himself in for so long. He didn't just want to confront Hank, he wanted to take a stand for Lily, but was he willing to risk everything, his reputation, his business? "Why should I care? She's not my problem no more," Hank shouted, drawing more attention. Jack could feel the eyes upon him, assessing, judging. Because, Jack finally found the courage to say, "You still have a chance to be a father. You may have squandered countless opportunities, but it's not too late for her." Hank's expression faltered, momentarily revealing vulnerability. In that instant, Jack realized that this wasn't just about confrontation. This was about redemption, the painful journey of addressing past mistakes. With the intensity of the moment crashing down on him, Jack took a breath, preparing to dig deeper into Hank's psyche, and perhaps his own. But would this encounter open the doors to Lily's future or push them both into further darkness? Jack's next words could change everything, but the consequences loomed heavy. The next moment was crucial. Would he strike a deal, or crash into a deeper conflict? The decision was about to unveil itself. Jack held Hank's gaze, every muscle in his body coiled tight with anticipation. Here, in this bar saturated with past echoes, he felt a moment of clarity. The air felt charged, as if an imminent storm was brewing, and he would be either the architect of change or a mere bystander. "I know you think that what you're doing is enough," Jack pressed, his voice unwavering, "but look at her life. Look at all the spaces you've left empty. Are you really going to fight against that?" Hank's face twisted, the lines of bitterness and regret etched deeper. He was corners of a man, cornered by the reality of his choices. Jack realized the truth, people like Hank didn't just need to be confronted, they needed to be seen. Beyond the anger and sorrow was a fractured human being who still had the chance to climb from the depths of despair. Reflecting on his own rise from that oppressive past, Jack's mind raced. He thought of the broken homes he'd grown up around, the dead-eyed individuals lost in chemical substances. In those moments, he'd made a vow, he would never be like them. But connecting to that part of himself now was heavier than expected. His pulse quickened as echoes of his youth surfaced, memories of desperation that haunted him still. "Why do you get to judge me?" Hank barked, feigning bravado. "You're a businessman, a suit. What makes you more worthy?" Jack couldn't dismiss the anger flaring up in Hank's defenses. This was a man cornered, not wanting to lose everything, still clinging to the myth of his capability. Jack realized that to reach Hank truly, he had to strip down the pretense, allow vulnerability to pierce this moment. Because I was once in this world, too. I saw parents like you. I watched kids get left behind. I made a choice that I would break that cycle, and here I stand, fighting for a child who already carries too much weight. You have a chance now, Hank, an opportunity to be more than a memory for Lily. The other patrons watched, their tension coiling tighter, sensing a pivotal moment unfolding in this flawed human landscape. A few were rooting for Jack, hoping he could ignite a flicker of change in Hank, while others dismissed him, a disconnected voice too far above the fray to comprehend the weight of circumstance. What do I even do, man? Hank said, his voice lowered, laced with despair. I've lost her. Jack's heart softened at the hint of anxiety that crept into Hank's tone. That was his sliver of hope. You begin to care. You drop the bottle. You show up. You fight for your daughter. It's hard, and you'll stumble, but every step counts. The silence in the bar was deafening. Jack felt an unyielding impulse to connect, to pull Hank back from the edge. Standing firm in his conviction, he shifted his approach. Let Lily know you're fighting for her. Tell her you're learning. Learning how to be better. But Hank's fingers trembled against the table, his expression shifting to that of a cracked veneer. Jack understood then that redemption wasn't merely an act, it was a journey, laden with accountability and horror. Maybe you have to confront yourself first, he continued, leaning in, before you can truly focus on her. Tension thickened in the air. Would Hank shatter under the weight of reality or rise up with newfound determination? Jack realized it was now or never, either Hank would grasp this moment, or they would both fall into obscurity. As Jack braced for the inevitable response, a flicker of dread slinked through him. If this moment unraveled, the hope he fled into might be swallowed by despair. Would Hank reject his plea, or would Jack finally shape a father's path, not just for Lily but for himself as well? The stakes couldn't be higher as they stood locked in this hazardous standoff. The decision was hanging desperately in the balance, stirring unspoken fears and long-buried aspirations. What was Hank capable of? The question loomed over them, pregnant with possibilities, all waiting on the answer. Would this be the moment everything changed? Jack felt the weight of Hank's silence pressing in, thick like the humidity that preceded a summer storm. He watched as Hank's bravado began to crumble under the gravity of his own reflection. This was a pivotal juncture, one that could turn the tide both for Hank and for Jack's understanding of his own purpose. Are you really ready to let her go? Jack pressed, the urgency in his voice stark against the bar's dimly lit backdrop. He needed Hank to confront his demons, not just for Lily, but for himself. The temptation to flee from that responsibility was a human reflex. Jack recognized it, felt it even in the pit of his own stomach. In that charged moment, Jack's past surged through him like a wave crashing onto a resolute shore. He recalled countless nights of witnessing despair, of watching families disintegrate under the weight of addiction and neglect. Those memories that once felt like chains were now powerful catalysts, pushing him toward dynamic change. He had a voice, a truth that emerged from living through it. Wasn't that what he had to offer Hank now? I can feel it. You're scared, Jack continued, his voice anchoring around vulnerability. But you can't keep hiding behind the bottle. You have to look at your daughter and let that fear drive you to be better, not break you down. Hank's jaw clenched, and for a moment, Jack thought he might lash out again. But Hank wasn't shouting anymore, the fire had been replaced by an ember of possibility. Hesitation flickered on his face, a mixture of embarrassment and apprehension danced in his eyes. Jack leaned in, lowering his voice to cut through the noise of the bar. Take the first step. You want to be a father, then step into that role. I can help you, but you have to meet me halfway. It won't be easy, and it's going to take time, but you start by making a different choice today. One choice that leads you back to her. As the words fell into the space between them, Jack felt the tension begin to shift. There was something raw and open in Hank's vulnerability that struck a chord within Jack. He remembered the days when he felt invisible, the choices that almost swallowed him whole. And yet, here he was, standing in front of a man waiting to make a similar choice to rise. What if I fail her again? Hank whispered, a tremor creeping in as the weight of his fears settled over him. Jack held his breath momentarily, an internal dialogue raging inside him. He understood that failure was part of the journey, it was a lesson in resilience. Then you learn from it. But right now, what matters is that you try. Show up, fight for her, forgive yourself first. Stop being your own worst enemy. Hank's eyes dropped, tracing the scuffed bar top like it held secrets. Jack could almost see the gears turning, an internal assessment of what that pathway to change would entail. He had thrown a stone into the water, but the ripples were still forming, there was still uncertainty about how deep those ripples would run, rising tension coiled tighter around them, the air buzzed with expectation. Then Hank raised his eyes, raw and trembling. I don't know if I can do it alone. Jack felt the shift in his core, a blend of recognition and determination. He was no longer confronting just Hank, he was confronting the man he once was, the man who was tired of fighting alone. You won't have to. You have me. But this has to come from you. You must decide not only to fight for your daughter but for yourself. The promise hung in the space, and Jack could sense the teetering edge Hank stood upon, unsure whether he would leap into the depths of his choice or retreat into the safety of his old patterns. Jack realized he had to create a foundation for that leap, a safety net for Hank's courage that would catch him should he stumble. Now is your time, Hank. The time to rediscover yourself, and not just as a father but as a man who can rise above the labels you've worn for so long. Jack's heart raced as he waited for Hank's decision. As the pause extended, Jack found himself grappling with an unexpected buoy of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they would both find redemption tonight. But as Hank's mouth moved to form a response, Jack's gut churned with the realization that the moment of truth was upon them. What was Hank truly capable of? Hank's voice shattered the silence, a cracked whisper that barely reached Jack's ears. I want to try. I want to be a father. The admission hung between them, both fragile and powerful. Jack felt a rush of warmth spread through him, igniting a flicker of hope. But he also sensed the weight of responsibility in that statement, the enormity of what was now required. Then let us start now, Jack urged, leaning in closer. What's the first thing you need to do? Hank shifted in his seat, grappling with the sudden rush of emotions. Jack could see the swirl of confusion and determination in his eyes, raw and undiluted. I need to tell her that I'm sorry. I need to show her I'm not going to disappear again. Jack nodded, impressed by the clarity emerging in Hank's voice. Good. Apologies are powerful. But after you say those words, you need to put them into action. What will that look like? Hank stared down at his hands, the question pulling him deeper into introspection. Jack watched as a mix of anxiety and resolve washed over him. This was at the moment he could either spiral further into uncertainty or emerge stronger, ready to embrace fatherhood. With a deep breath, Hank replied, I guess I need to stop drinking. I can't pretend to care for her when I'm drowning in my own vices. The determination in his tone sent a shockwave through Jack. This was a pivotal moment of clarity, revealing a hidden aspect of Hank's resolve that only now was surfacing. That's the first step, Jack affirmed. Understand that taking it means not just saying it, but committing to change. You need a plan, actions that will demonstrate to Lily that her father is fighting for her. Yes, but it feels so monumental, Hank admitted, fear bubbling beneath the surface. What if I fail? What if every step I take is in the wrong direction? Jack sensed Hank's apprehension, he understood it all too well. Those fears are natural. Remember, you're not starting this battle alone anymore. You can lean on others and develop the structure you need. Use this fear as fuel, not as a crutch. Hank's brow furrowed as he reflected on Jack's words. The tension tapered, replaced by a flicker of resolve as he began to visualize the steps before him. Maybe I could talk to someone. A group, or a therapist. I've heard those conversations help. A knowing smile broke across Jack's face. Exactly. Reach out for support. You don't have to shoulder this alone. Seek mentorship, build a network, share your vulnerabilities. Let them guide you. In that moment, Hank's expression shifted, the shadow on his face lightened as he started to envision a path leading away from despair. I'll do it. I'll look for a group and make that phone call. Jack felt a swell of pride. Here they were, two men wrestling with their pasts, both standing at the cusp of a new chapter. The bar, once a backdrop of melancholy, now felt electric, a space where rebirth was brewing, but then Jack noticed it, a lingering hesitation in Hank's gaze. It was as if he was wrestling with something deep-rooted, another layer of complexity yearning to be unveiled. What's weighing on you? Jack asked gently, leaning into the burgeoning intimacy of the moment. Hank hesitated again, his breath coming in shallow bursts. What if learning to be a father means confronting the real reasons why I drank? What if it means admitting to myself why I started this cycle in the first place? Jack's heart raced. This was a crucial crossroad. Then face it. Those truths may hurt, but confronting them is essential for your growth. You've started this journey for Lily, but uncovering those layers is part of your healing. It might even transform you in ways you never expected. As Jack spoke, he felt the weight of his own experiences resonating through every word. He had watched many come undone after burying those truths, only to find that true strength comes from not running away from pain, but daring to face it. In that charged moment, Hank seemed to be standing at the entrance of a great unknown, ready to take a leap. But with that leap came a grave uncertainty. The past echoed within him, a siren call attempting to lure him back to familiar patterns of escape. The journey isn't just about what happens next, Jack said, sensing the hesitation that lingered. It's about who you become while taking those steps. You may stumble, but it's the rising that matters. Hank's expression hardened into determination as he stood up, full of a new resolve. I'm ready, Jack. It's time to face my demons. The words resonated like a rallying cry, not just for Hank, but also reawakening Jack's deeper quest for meaning in his own life, and yet, beneath the surface, tension churned. A new showdown loomed, one that asked, how far was Hank willing to go to reclaim his role as a father? As they left the bar, an unexpected call from Hank's past disrupted their plans. Jack's heart raced. This could lead to pivotal revelations that neither had anticipated. What awaited them as they stepped into the world beyond? Hank's hand trembled slightly as he stared at his phone, the name on the screen igniting a mix of dread and confusion. It was an old friend, someone from the days when he found solace in alcohol rather than family. Jack noticed Hank's discomfort and stepped closer, grounding him as the world spun in uncertainty. Answer it, Jack urged, his tone steady. You won't know what's at stake until you do. Hank took a deep breath, his thumb hovering over the screen. What if it's bad news? What if they expect me to be the old me? Then prove them wrong, Jack countered. Let them see how much you've changed. You're reclaiming your story, this is your chance to rewrite it. With a resigned nod, Hank pressed accept. Hank. The voice on the line was tentative, filled with an undercurrent of apprehension. Yeah, it's me, Hank replied, steadying himself against the bar's surface, transforming it into a makeshift support. The conversation unfolded like peeling layers of an onion. Hank listened while old memories flooded in and walls he thought were shattered began to crack again. The friends spoke of mutual acquaintances and the mess that lingered in their shared past, but there was something deeper, an unspoken need for reconnection that hung in the air. You're back in town, right? We should meet up, the friend suggested. Hank hesitated, aware that old acquaintances could often lead back to the very lifestyle he was trying to escape. Yet, he recognized that to grow, he needed to confront his past, not shun it. Sure, he responded, surprising himself with the confidence that had emerged since his talk with Jack. After ending the call, Jack looked at Hank, curiosity painted all over his face. This could be good or bad, what's your gut telling you? Hank furrowed his brow, torn between two opposing forces. I want to say good, but the anxiety is overwhelming. There's a risk that I'll slip back into old habits. That's part of the decision-making process. Acknowledge the anxiety, but don't let it control you. By facing your old self, you're strengthening the new one, Jack assured him. Hank pondered Jack's words, his breath steadying as he considered the weight of the upcoming encounter. He had to seize this opportunity not just for himself but also as a testament to Lily. The next days were a volatile mix of anticipation and dread. He began preparing mentally, allowing himself to feel the tension without yielding to it. With each preparation deciding on suitable clothing, rehearsing what he might say, he discovered layers of courage within him he never knew existed, but there was another layer, a looming confrontation that sat heavy in his chest, the regret of the past and the ever-present fear of failure. As Hank watched his reflection on a day before the meeting, the man staring back at him seemed altered. The hollow eyes that once belonged to a defeated man were replaced by a glimmer of hope. When the day arrived, he put one foot in front of the other, feeling his heart pound against his ribs. As he approached the cafe they agreed to meet, he questioned if he would be strong enough to rewrite his narrative. Every instinct screamed for retreat, but he suppressed it. Hank stepped inside, scanning the room until his eyes found his friend. The exchange that followed was a delicate dance, a mix of nostalgia and confrontation, revisiting the past while declaring a commitment to the future. They shared stories, laughter, and the weight of choices made. Hank felt himself navigating through memories while cautiously laying down the foundations of a new relationship built on honesty. The conversation shifted to sobriety, the truth spilling from Hank's lips like a confession. He spoke of his desire to be more than the man who once sought refuge in a bottle. As the hours slipped by, something shifted within Hank. He began to view his past not as a shackle but as a teacher. The interaction sparked reflections on his responsibility to himself and Lily, igniting a deeper drive for commitment. When the meeting concluded, Hank walked out with a lightness he hadn't felt in years. It struck him that he was grappling with a new reality. Every step forward was a step toward proving he was worthy of his daughter's love, yet, as he reached his car, a shadow lurked in the background of his mind. Questions swirled: would this moment truly last? Was he equipped to sustain this newfound resolve when temptation knocked once again? Just then, his phone buzzed with a new message, the details of a potential therapy group meeting for fathers. The invitation felt serendipitous, urging him to embrace the journey ahead. Taking a deep breath, Hank contemplated the leap into this next phase, ready to cement his plans to heal. But beneath that resolve, the lingering shadows of his past lurked, ready to test his determination. Hank's heart raced as he considered the imminent phone call, a chance to further solidify his commitment to himself and his role as father. What would he find on the other end? Hank sat in his car, the engine humming quietly as he toyed with his phone, contemplating the number displayed on the screen. It represented an opportunity for growth, perhaps even enlightenment, but it was also a reminder of all he had lost. A therapy group for fathers, an uncharted territory rich with both potential and the specter of vulnerability. Each breath he took felt both heavy and liberating, laden with the weight of past mistakes yet buoyed by newfound conviction. That he glanced at the clock, he was running late. The idea of turning back gnawed at him, but he squelched it. Memories from the meeting with his old friend echoed through his mind, a proof that he could confront his past without succumbing to it. Today, he needed to transform that courage into action, to take a solid step toward reclaiming his life as a father. As he entered the building, a community center housing a plethora of support groups, Hank's heart raced. The painted walls were adorned with colorful posters proclaiming resilience, healing, and unity. He could hear muted voices filtering through the hallway, a mixture of laughter and shared struggles. Each sound sent a shiver down his spine, unsettling yet strangely comforting. He was not alone. Instinctively, he straightened his posture and squared his shoulders, entering the designated room with measured steps. Half a dozen men were already seated in a circle, some shifting in their chairs, others engrossed in a lively conversation. As he approached, they stopped, all eyes turning towards him. It was a disarming moment, one that evoked every doubt he had ever wrestled with. Would he be accepted here? Could he share his story without judgment? "Hey, new guy, come sit," one of them called out, grinning warmly. Cracking the awkward moment open, Hank moved toward the circle, feeling both the weight of anticipation and a rush of relief wash over him. "Welcome. I'm Mark," the facilitator said, gesturing toward a seat. "This is a safe space where we can talk about the challenges we face as dads. No judgment, just support." The phrase felt like a lifeline. Clinging to it, Hank sat down, forcing himself to breathe deeply. Mark began by sharing his story, a tale of mistakes, recklessness, and ultimately, redemption. Adults spoke candidly, revealing their struggles with addiction, depression, and the constant fight to be there for their children. Each story resonated with Hank, echoing his own journey in harrowing detail. Then, Hank felt it, a bubbling urgency to step into the light. He cleared his throat, his voice surprisingly steady. "I'm Hank." He paused, aware of the gravity behind his next words. "I've made a lot of mistakes. I lost my way for a long time, stuck in the bottle, but I'm here to change that. I want to be a father my daughter can be proud of." The space held its breath, a palpable silence following his admission. Then, surprisingly, nods of understanding began to emerge. They hadn't merely heard him, they felt him. With each shared confession that followed, Hank realized that vulnerability had evolved into a formidable bond. Here, they were all marching into an uncertain future armed with the lessons of their fragmented past. After the session, the men clustered together, exchanging numbers, and forming connections that Hank had not anticipated. A few approached him, offering shared experiences, further maligning the isolation he clung to for too long. Each conversation felt like stepping stones toward hope, a promising path toward accountability, male camaraderie, and perhaps even fatherly wisdom. Days turned into a few weeks, and what began as daunting meetings transformed into an anchor for Hank, a steady footing as he waded through the choppy waters of fatherhood and recovery. The dread of facing childhood haunts was receding, replaced by the buoyancy of shared laughter, conversations filled with vulnerability and empathy, yet, peace remained as elusive as ever. Just as he thought he was gaining control, feelings of inadequacy resurfaced. A looming fear prickled at him. What if he faltered? Would he still be worthy of the connection he crafted with Lily, his daughter? The thought gnawed at his resolve. Just then, a message from Lily's school popped up on his phone. Parent-teacher meetings were being scheduled for the coming week. The anxiety struck him like a lightning bolt. Was he ready for this? To face not just other parents, but himself as a father in full view of those competing ideals? Navigating through the emotions inside him, Hank clawed for stability, the weight of the moment propelling him toward introspection. Was he truly ready to embrace all facets of fatherhood? Would he rise above his past and fully commit? As he locked eyes with his reflection in the rearview mirror, determination surged within him. It was time to take a step deeper into his journey, one not defined by his mistakes, but instead by his commitment to learn and grow. Suddenly, the thought rushed in: what kind of man did he want to be at the meetings? And would he have what it takes to confront the uncomfortable truth of his own reflections in the eyes of others? Weeks had slipped through Hank's fingers, the fleeting nature of time amplifying his worries. The impending parent-teacher meeting loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon, casting shadows over the progress he had made. With every passing day, he questioned whether his newfound camaraderie among the other fathers was merely a facade, one that might crumble when exposed to the harsh light of reality. The lunch hour came and went, yet Hank found himself rooted in the park across from Lily's school, watching children run freely across the grass, their laughter slicing through the air like a promise. He felt a sharp pang of longing, intermingled with a bitter reminder of years wasted in his struggle against himself. What kind of father was he? Would the other parents merely view him as the wayward man he was, rather than the man he aspired to be? His phone buzzed once more with Lily's teacher's name displayed onto the screen. The workshop titled Understanding Your Child had arrived in the calendar, a message specific enough to pierce through Hank's anxious thoughts. While it meant greater engagement in his daughter's life, it also came with a lingering fear of exposure. This was a chance for scrutiny, not just from his daughter's educators, but also from other parents. Each notification was a reminder of what he still needed to overcome. Closing his eyes, Hank tried to summon the strength he discovered in the support group. You are not defined by your past, he whispered to himself. And yet, a small, insidious voice in the back of his mind reminded him of an uncomfortable truth. Mistakes could hang over a man like a shroud, and no amount of cheerful rhetoric could quite wash that away. That he drove home, battling a rising tide of doubt. The walls of his living room felt like an enclosure of solitude. All around him were reminders of his struggles, a dusty guitar propped in the corner that he had long since stopped playing, abandoned dreams knocking insistently from inside his cluttered mind. Who was he kidding? Could he connect with other parents when he still had such a wall between him and his own life? The quiet evening settled in, but the internal storm raged on. Hank picked up the guitar, allowed the weight of the instrument to settle against him, and strummed an off-key note, tearing through the silence. Music had once been a refuge, a way to express feelings he could not voice, a layer of himself buried under disappointment and regret. The melodies felt distant now, echoes of a time he longed to reclaim. Yet, the uncertainty pushed him to wonder, could he channel that long-lost expression positively for Lily? Hank closed his eyes and began to play simple chords, inviting vulnerability to weave into the notes. As music filled the space around him, he dared to dream of a future where he wasn't just a recovering father but a father well engaged in his daughter's life through shared interests and experiences. Instead of allowing anxiety to paralyze him, could he reclaim those passions as tools rather than burdens? As he played, the repetitive motion began to soothe him, creating rhythmic connections in his mind. A realization sparked: Hank could engage with Lily not just as a participant, but as a creator. This awakening to musical possibility ignited an unexpected ambition. He could bring music to her world, using it to reconnect and mend the rift forged by his past. The following day at the meeting, he would decide to step ahead, share this idea with Lily, and perhaps even unveil it to the other parents. This was not a mere decision, it was a pivotal moment, a launchpad into a brand new chapter. Suddenly, all the nervousness and doubt pulled away, replaced by a focused mission to harness his past struggles into a shared experience with his daughter. With resolve invigorating him, Hank pulled out his phone, eager to text Lily. The sound of a new message dinged, a reminder of that all-too-familiar parent-teacher meeting that awaited him. And now, he understood what he was willing to face. Confrontation wasn't simply an external challenge. It was the battle within himself to embrace every fragment of his identity. As the night deepened, Hank prepared his mind. Tomorrow's meeting wasn't just about other families, it was about the authenticity he wished to instill in the father-daughter bond. But deeper questions gnawed at him. Could he muster the courage to reveal his passion, to take that leap of creativity and honesty? The morning sun would rise on new challenges, but would he step into the light? As he brushed his fingers over the guitar strings for one last note of comfort, Hank sensed something stirring within, a blend of nervous anticipation and burgeoning hope. What awaited him in the faces of those parents? Would they recognize the growth he had fought for, or would the shadows of his past remain too strong? He could already feel the weight of their gazes. The morning arrived with a clarity that felt foreign to Hank. He woke with a jolt, the direct sunlight streaming through his window like a spotlight. The day stretched ahead, filled with potential yet shrouded in apprehension. The parent-teacher meeting was no ordinary gathering, it was an opportunity for him to confront the armor of doubt he had donned for so long. As he stood in front of his mirror, he rehearsed the words that felt foreign on his tongue. "I want to help lead a music workshop," he muttered, a mix of desperation and hope clashing within him. But the reflection staring back was laced with uncertainty. Could he truly stand in front of others as a man reborn? The weight of past failures loomed large, a persistent reminder of a time he wanted to forget. Yet today marked a turning point, a moment where he could decide to either hide or be vulnerable. En route to the school, Hank clutched the guitar case tightly, the instrument feeling like both a burden and a blessing. Each turn of the wheel echoed his deep breaths, an attempt to stave off the rising tide of anxiety washing over him. Thoughts thrummed in his mind like guitar strings being plucked one by one, each note sounding louder as the school drew nearer. What if he was met with ridicule instead of camaraderie? What if he stumbled over his words, exposing the fragile man behind the carefully constructed image? Pulling into the parking lot, he was struck by the sight of parents mingling, their laughter mingling with the morning air. An electric charge surged through him, igniting a duality of desire and fear. They seemed so effortless, engaged in their roles, while he stood at the precipice of his own reality, burdened by self-doubt. Could he truly belong in their world? As he stepped into the school hallway, the walls closed around him, but Lily's face lit up his path, a beacon of innocence and acceptance. Her smile cracked the armor he pulled tightly around himself. "Daddy!" she shouted, rushing toward him, her enthusiasm washing over him like a warm balm. In that instant, Hank realized he wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for her, for the father he wanted to be. The meeting room hummed with energy as parents took their seats. Hank adjusted his grip on the guitar, feeling the texture of the case under his fingers, a soothing reminder of his purpose, a signal to himself that today would not be about hiding. He glanced around, the faces of parents morphing into a kaleidoscope of expressions. Fear flickered at the edges, but determination surged within him like a swift melody. When the teacher called for volunteers, Hank took a deep breath, stood as if propelled by an unseen force, and raised his hand. As he spoke, his voice began to flow, each word building upon the last, a proposal for a music workshop, an invitation to share not just music but connection. His heart raced as he could feel eyes upon him, each gaze a barrier or a bridge in his journey toward authenticity. He glanced at Lily, who nodded enthusiastically, her faith reminding him that vulnerability could transform into strength. The room fell silent, and for a few moments, time stood still. Would they embrace this part of him, or would they recoil, as he feared? Hank could feel the tension flutter in the air as his heartbeat echoed in his ears. Within moments that felt both eternal and fleeting, a hand shot up, a mother enthusiastically declaring her support. Others joined, echoing thoughts of excitement, tossing questions into the air like confetti, and Hank's spirit soared. Recognition flickered in the depths of their eyes, and suddenly, the shadows of his past felt lighter, retreating like the tides. With each laugh shared over ideas, Hank discovered a new energy pulsing within him, the collaboration igniting a sense of community he never expected to build. His fears began to dissipate, replaced by a tangible excitement and desire to nurture this new path. Yet, as the discussions continued, Hank felt a nagging whisper within him: this was only the beginning. He was still stepping onto a stage filled with risks, and the true test of his courage was on the horizon. What would he do when the truth of his past threatened to resurface? Would the children and parents remain supportive when the facade crumbled, revealing the man he had once been? The weight of these questions settled heavy in his chest, challenging the fragile sense of victory he felt. With resolve, he acknowledged the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. As the meeting came to a close, Hank found himself at a new crossroads. He had taken a step forward, but with each step, he now felt the pressure of expectations, his own and those of others. Was he truly prepared for the scrutiny that would accompany this newfound engagement in Lily's life? His mind raced as he departed the school, a mix of exhilaration and anxiety swirling within him. Stepping into the light felt like undertaking a personal revolution, yet uncertainty loomed. The day held the promise of transformation, yet the shadows of his past still hovered close, waiting for the moment to emerge. As the school building receded into the background, Hank threw one last glance over his shoulder, knowing this chapter of his life was just beginning. The road ahead demanded more courage and authenticity than he had ever shown. Would he be able to sustain this newfound momentum, or would the pressures of his own history prove too great? With a surge of determination, he took a deep breath, ready to face whatever awaited him. In the weeks following the parent-teacher meeting, Hank Thompson entered a phase of his life that felt surreal yet undeniably real. He embraced his newfound role as a father with a palpable fervor, consistently engaging with Lily through the music workshop they had established. Each session turned into a canvas of creativity where laughter echoed, and his daughter's joy became a symphony that resonated through his heart. Hank's commitment to change became evident in his daily routine. He attended group sessions, bonded with fellow fathers, and most importantly, continued to show up for Lily. The melodic strums of his guitar transitioned from his living room where he practiced alone into vibrant gatherings filled with children eager to create their own sounds. His resolve to prove himself as a father transformed the very core of his existence, radiating warmth and commitment towards Lily, an undeniable shift from who he once was. The feedback from the new community of parents and children was exhilarating. Hank's workshop became a beacon, encouraging parental involvement and fostering a sense of belonging for everyone who walked through those doors. It was during one of these sessions that Hank achieved a monumental milestone. He played an original song he had written for Lily. As he strummed the final chord, looking into her beaming eyes, he felt the weight of doubt and remorse that once clung to him dissolve into nothingness. Days turned into months, and the tapestry of Hank's new life began to weave around open dialogue about issues of parenting, addiction, and growth. He had not only rewritten his narrative, he had transformed it into a flourishing testament of resilience. The sessions with other fathers offered unexpected benefits as well. Hank began to cultivate friendships that ran deeper than mere acquaintances. These men were allies in the journey of fatherhood, each contributing to and benefiting from collective wisdom. It wasn't absent of challenges. Occasionally, the barriers of his past would rear their heads. Times when doubt scraped against his confidence, tempting him to retreat into the shadows of regret. Yet, he had learned to recognize those moments as they came. The echoes of his history were reminders of the fight he had already won. Through therapy and camaraderie, he had developed strategies to navigate those difficult feelings, leveraging his vulnerability as an asset rather than a prison. The real test of his transformation arrived during the school's year-end recital. Hank and Lily were slated to perform together in front of the entire school community, a culmination of their hard work and commitment. The days leading up to the performance felt like an approaching storm, anxiety mingling with excitement. He rehearsed with Lily until the notes blended into something beautiful. Yet, as the day dawned, heartbeats quickened and uncertainties whispered in the back of his mind. What if he faltered under the spotlight? But on that day, Hank chose to embrace the moment fully. Stepping onto the stage with Lily, he gripped the neck of his guitar, feeling the familiar comfort of the wood beneath his fingers, grounding him in the present. Time slipped away as he settled into the rhythm. Each strum resonated with love and authenticity. Looking at Lily, radiating with confidence, he recognized that this was more than a performance, it was a declaration. As they played, the audience fell into an unexpected silence, captivated by the spark of their connection. Suddenly, the music transformed into a conversation, not just between father and daughter, but with everyone present. It echoed their collective struggles, hope, and the promise of healing. By the time they struck the last note, resounding applause erupted like fireworks, vibrant and alive. Standing on stage, Hank felt a wave of fulfillment wash over him. This was not only an accomplishment but evidence of his evolution from a fractured past into a confident, involved father. The fleeting fears melted away, replaced by a profound sense of peace and belonging. He had guided himself through the darkness into a space filled with love, opportunity, and connection. In that moment, Hank understood his identity was no longer defined by his mistakes but by the choices he made and actions he took. He had conquered his insecurities and demonstrated to himself and others that change is possible not just for him, but for those who dare to face their demons and fight for a better tomorrow. As he exited the stage, cheers still ringing in his ears, Hank took a moment to breathe it all in. The journey had been tumultuous, yet through it all, he had established a solid confidence in his fatherhood and assured competence manifesting in unexpected ways. He had proven to himself that redemption was within reach, and his heart brimmed with justified pride. This was not merely a resolution, it was the beginning of a lifetime commitment to summoning the best version of himself, lovingly nurturing Lily as she blossomed and grew. And as Hank embraced her after their performance, he realized he had accomplished something much greater. He had built a bridge from his past to a hopeful future filled with possibilities. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel and join the community of true fans of personal overcoming stories. Don't wait even one more second.